Have you ever felt invisible in a room full of people, as if no one truly sees your worth, your effort, or the weight of what you carry? That sting, that subtle ache that comes from being dismissed or ignored, it doesn't just happen by chance. It's not the world being cruel, and it's not bad luck. Often, it is shaped by invisible patterns. Habits we barely notice in ourselves. Habits that quietly signal to others that our time, our words, and our presence are optional. And the truth is, when people fail to respect you, it chips away at something far deeper than just social standing. It chips away at your confidence, your sense of value, and the belief that you deserve to be treated with dignity. Imagine walking through life carrying that invisible weight, constantly having to fight for recognition, constantly questioning whether you are enough. That struggle doesn't just exhaust you, it limits everything you can achieve. But here's the promise. Understanding these hidden habits and choosing to change them can transform how the world sees you, and more importantly, how you see yourself. You have the power to stop being overlooked, to stop being dismissed, and to step into a presence that commands attention naturally, without having to raise your voice or demand validation. Respect, real respect, isn't handed out lightly. It's cultivated in small, deliberate ways, and it begins with awareness. It begins with the willingness to look at yourself honestly, to see the habits that might be undermining your own value. You might think that respect is something others decide to give, but in reality, it's something you earn every day through your actions, your choices, and the consistency with which you live your life. Every moment you choose responsibility over avoidance, clarity over vagueness, boundaries over overextension, reliability over flakiness, you are sending a silent message that you are someone worth noticing, worth listening to, worth standing beside. And here is the reward for paying attention, for being willing to face the uncomfortable truth about yourself. When you break these invisible chains, you step into a version of yourself that no one can ignore. People begin to trust you naturally, to value your time and opinion, and to respond to you with the respect that reflects the person you have become. You stop wasting energy trying to prove your worth because your presence alone communicates it. By the end of this journey, you will not only recognize the habits that sabotage your respect, but you will also gain the tools to replace them with powerful behaviors that elevate your life, your relationships, and your sense of self. If you are ready to step out of the shadows, to break patterns that have silently limited you, and to claim the respect that has always been yours to begin with, then stay with me. Because what follows is more than advice. It is a roadmap to becoming someone the world can no longer take for granted, someone whose presence alone commands acknowledgement and admiration. This is your chance to reclaim the power and dignity that have always belonged to you, to transform the quiet frustrations of disrespect into the undeniable force of your own unshakable value. Respect is not a gift you receive, it is a reflection of the energy you carry and the choices you make every single day. It is the quiet signal you send through your actions, your words, and even the way you carry yourself when no one is watching. When you walk into a room, people sense the value you place on yourself long before you speak. They feel it in the firmness of your handshake, the steadiness of your gaze, the calm assurance that your time and presence are not negotiable. And the most powerful truth is this: when you command respect from within, the world has no choice but to follow. People can sense insecurity, hesitation, and doubt as easily as they sense confidence, clarity, and strength. That is why so many who are talented, capable, and intelligent still struggle to be recognized. It is not their ability that is in question. It is the way they unconsciously allow themselves to be treated. Every time you shrink to make others comfortable, every time you let your voice soften or your boundaries blur, you are signaling that your presence is optional, that your needs are secondary, and the consequences are subtle but profound. Doors close quietly, opportunities pass without acknowledgement, and influence slips through your fingers like sand. But imagine the opposite. Imagine moving through life with a presence so grounded, so deliberate, that people instinctively adjust to your weight, your authority, your value. When you stop bending to every expectation and start standing firm in your principles, respect follows naturally. It does not require confrontation or aggression. It grows from consistency, accountability, and the courage to claim the space that is rightfully yours. Psychology shows that humans are wired to mirror the energy they perceive. When you treat yourself with respect, others do the same. When you enforce your own boundaries, people unconsciously honor them. When you speak with clarity and act with integrity, influence grows effortlessly around you. This is the invisible architecture of respect, the structure you build with every decision, every action, every refusal to settle for less than your worth. And the most exciting part is that you do not need to wait for permission to start. Every moment you choose to act intentionally, to honor your commitments, to assert your boundaries, and to communicate with precision, you are laying the foundation for the life you deserve. You are no longer asking the world to notice you. You are creating a presence that cannot be ignored. The energy you radiate begins to reshape the way others interact with you, and over time, it transforms the very patterns of your life. Respect becomes not something you chase, but a natural byproduct of the person you have deliberately chosen to become. Feel that power. Feel that shift within you, the spark of awareness that reminds you you are capable, worthy, and unshakable. Let it grow into determination, and let it guide you to confront the habits that have kept you small. Because when you align your actions with your value, when you anchor yourself in integrity, the world responds, not because you demand it, but because you embody it. This is the first step toward transforming not only how others treat you, but how you experience yourself every single day. One of the most destructive habits you can carry is inconsistency, the silent erosion of trust that leaves people unsure whether they can rely on you. Every time you promise something and fail to follow through, every time your words float in the air without substance, you chip away at the foundation of respect. Inconsistency is more than just forgetting or slipping up. It is the subtle signal that your commitments are negotiable, that your presence is unreliable, that your word does not hold weight, and the truth is, people feel it instantly, even when you think no one is paying attention. Human brains are wired to detect patterns, to reward reliability and punish unpredictability. When someone is inconsistent, others unconsciously protect themselves, keeping distance, questioning intentions, and reducing opportunities to trust or collaborate. Think about it. Every missed promise, every wavering decision, every moment you let your integrity bend for comfort sends a message to the world that you cannot be counted on. That message is louder than any excuse you might offer. But here is the liberating truth. Consistency is entirely within your control. It is the power to show up, the courage to honor your word, the discipline to make your actions match your intentions. Each small, deliberate act of reliability is like building a brick in a wall that others cannot break down, a wall that silently commands recognition, admiration, and respect. When people begin to see that your commitments are not empty, that your presence is dependable, they stop questioning your value and start trusting your authority. Every time you follow through, every time you deliver on what you promise, you create momentum. That momentum doesn't just affect how others see you, it reshapes how you see yourself. You begin to recognize your own capability, your own strength, and your own reliability. The world responds to the energy you project, and nothing projects strength more clearly than someone who is consistent, someone who is unwavering, someone who can be counted on no matter the circumstance. Consistency is not about perfection. It is about alignment, about creating a pattern that others can rely on, about showing up even when it is uncomfortable, inconvenient, or exhausting. This habit, once mastered, transforms relationships, elevates influence, and commands a level of respect that cannot be taken lightly. Imagine the freedom of moving through life knowing that people trust your word without hesitation, that doors open because others know your presence carries weight, that your reputation precedes you not through boast or demand, but through the quiet, undeniable proof of your actions. Every choice to act consistently, to honor what you say, to follow through on even the smallest commitments is a choice to strengthen your presence, to cultivate respect, and to step closer to the person you are capable of becoming. There is no substitute for this power. There is no shortcut to the trust and authority it builds. In every moment you embrace consistency, you are taking a definitive step away from invisibility and toward a life where your value is recognized, your voice is heard, and your presence is never overlooked. You have the power to begin this transformation now with one decision, one action, one promise kept. Another habit that quietly erodes respect is the inability to set clear boundaries. It is the habit of saying yes when your heart says no, of overextending yourself to accommodate others at the cost of your own needs, of allowing people to dictate how your time, energy, and attention are spent. Boundaries are not walls meant to isolate you. They are the invisible lines that communicate value. They tell the world, and more importantly yourself, that your presence, your energy, and your life are not open to exploitation. Without boundaries, respect becomes conditional, a fragile construct that relies on constant negotiation and compromise. People sense this immediately, even when you don't. When you allow others to overstep, when you bend to every demand, your silence sends the message that your needs are secondary, that your priorities are negotiable, that your self-worth depends on external approval, and the impact is devastating. Relationships strain, opportunities are taken for granted, and your influence diminishes. You begin to feel drained, frustrated, and resentful, while the world remains unaware of the cost you pay. But the truth is that respect grows from the courage to define and enforce your boundaries. It is the quiet assertion that your time is valuable, that your energy is sacred, and that your presence is not an open invitation for exploitation. Boundaries are not selfish. They are the foundation of self-respect, the framework that allows others to understand how to engage with you meaningfully. When you clearly communicate your limits, when you act with consistency to uphold them, you send an unspoken signal: I am someone who knows my worth, and I will not allow it to be diminished. Psychology tells us that humans are drawn to strength and clarity. When you establish boundaries, people respect your structure because it mirrors inner confidence. They instinctively recognize that you are centered, deliberate, and in command of your life. Boundaries also protect your energy, allowing you to focus on growth, on meaningful connections, and on actions that align with your purpose. Every time you refuse to tolerate disrespect, every time you assert what you will and will not accept, you are building a personal gravity that others cannot ignore. Respect becomes automatic, not because you demand it, but because you live it. Imagine the liberation of moving through life unburdened by the weight of unmet obligations, unshaken by the pressure to conform, and unafraid to honor your own needs. Every interaction becomes a reflection of your value, every relationship a mutual exchange rooted in understanding and regard. By mastering boundaries, you create a life where your presence is acknowledged, your efforts appreciated, and your voice carries weight. You transform the silent pattern of disregard into one of recognition, admiration, and influence. The energy you cultivate through boundaries is magnetic. It draws people toward you not out of obligation, but out of genuine respect for who you are and what you stand for. Each decision to honor yourself, each act of courage to protect your time and energy is a deliberate step toward commanding the respect that has always been your right. This habit, once embraced, reshapes not only how the world treats you, but how you experience your own life. Empowered, valued, and unstoppable. One of the most overlooked habits that silently erodes respect is a lack of accountability. It is easy to blame circumstances, to point fingers, to explain away failures and shortcomings as the result of forces outside your control. But every time you refuse to own your choices, every time you allow excuses to replace action, you are sending a signal to the world: I am not responsible for my life, and therefore I am not fully in control of it. Accountability is more than admitting mistakes. It is the courage to face reality without distortion, to take ownership of your actions and their consequences, and to demonstrate through consistent behavior that you are someone who can be trusted to stand firm even when the outcomes are uncomfortable. People respect those who do not shy away from responsibility, who confront challenges with integrity rather than avoidance, and who rise to meet expectations rather than duck behind rationalizations. Every time you avoid accountability, you weaken your presence, dilute your influence, and teach others that your word, your actions, and your commitments are negotiable. But when you embrace responsibility fully, you build an invisible force around you, a presence that others feel instinctively, a weight that demands acknowledgement and commands trust. Psychology shows that humans are drawn to competence, reliability, and authenticity. Owning your actions signals all three. When you admit mistakes without defensiveness, when you make corrections without delay, and when you hold yourself to your own standards, people unconsciously mirror the respect you show yourself. Accountability is magnetic because it is rare, deliberate, and rooted in courage. Imagine how your life would shift if every choice, every action, every commitment was met with absolute ownership. Doors that once remained closed begin to open because others know that you can be counted on. Influence grows because people trust that your decisions are not capricious, but intentional. Relationships deepen because authenticity replaces pretense, and every interaction carries the weight of integrity. Accountability transforms not just the way others perceive you, it transforms how you perceive yourself. You no longer feel adrift in the currents of circumstance. You no longer wait for permission or validation from external forces. You become the architect of your own life, the commander of your own destiny. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to demonstrate strength, every setback a chance to show resilience, every success a reflection of deliberate action. When you choose accountability, you are choosing respect, not only from the world but from the person in the mirror. That choice elevates every decision, sharpens every focus, and amplifies every action. Excuses shrink, procrastination fades, and the invisible patterns that allow disrespect to flourish are replaced by deliberate habits of authority, integrity, and self-command. Accountability is the cornerstone of presence. Without it, influence collapses, trust erodes, and respect remains elusive. With it, you stand unshakable, unignored, and undeniable. The energy you radiate when you own your life is electric. It shifts environments, demands attention, and inspires others to rise to your level. Step into that energy fully. Take ownership of every choice. Claim the respect that comes naturally to those who refuse to hide behind excuses and who refuse to let their potential be diminished. This is the power that transforms how you are seen, and most importantly, how you see yourself. Capable, worthy, and unstoppable. A habit that silently undermines respect is the failure to communicate with clarity and purpose. Every time your words are vague, hesitant, or unintentional, you leave space for misunderstanding, doubt, and disregard. Communication is not just about speaking, it is about projecting confidence, conviction, and authority in a way that others can feel, even before they fully comprehend your message. When your words are muddled or uncertain, people unconsciously question your competence, your intentions, and your value. They fill in the gaps with assumptions, often at your expense, and what should have been influence becomes friction. What could have been admiration becomes doubt. Clarity in communication is a reflection of self-respect. It demonstrates that you value your ideas, your time, and the attention of those around you. When you speak deliberately, when you choose your words with intention, when you eliminate hesitation and filler, you create presence. You create an energy that others recognize as authority. Neuroscience shows that humans respond to signals of confidence and certainty. The tone, cadence, and structure of speech trigger subconscious patterns of trust and credibility. When your communication is precise and purposeful, you are no longer asking for respect. You are compelling it. Think about the impact of every conversation, every meeting, every interaction where you could speak with deliberate power but settle for uncertainty. Every moment you hesitate, every time your message wavers, you leave influence on the table. You train people to ignore or undervalue your contributions, even when your insight is sharp and your ideas transformative. But the reverse is equally true. When you commit to clarity, when you practice intentional speech, when you refine your ability to convey ideas with impact, the world begins to respond differently. People listen, people engage, people follow. Clarity does more than shape perception, it shapes reality. It allows your vision, your boundaries, your principles, and your expectations to be understood and respected without question. It transforms passive observers into active participants, skeptics into believers, and indifference into admiration. This is the quiet, powerful way that respect grows. Not through volume or force, but through precision, intention, and authority. Every time you pause to choose your words carefully, to align your voice with your purpose, to speak from a place of conviction, you reinforce your presence. You anchor yourself in a way that cannot be shaken by criticism, doubt, or opposition. Your energy becomes magnetic because it is grounded in authenticity, competence, and courage. And the cumulative effect is unstoppable. Clarity in communication builds a reputation that precedes you, influence that multiplies without effort, and respect that is earned silently yet unbreakably. This habit is not about being perfect, it is about being deliberate. It is about ensuring that your voice, your message, and your presence always reflect the value you carry within. Each conscious word you speak strengthens your authority, enhances your credibility, and deepens the respect others naturally feel toward you. Step into the discipline of precise communication. Own your voice, own your message, and own the space your presence occupies. In doing so, you transform not only how the world perceives you, but how you perceive yourself, capable, confident, and unquestionably worthy of respect. A destructive habit that quietly corrodes respect is inconsistency. It is the subtle pattern of saying one thing and doing another, of presenting a strong front only to retreat when pressure mounts, of promising actions that never materialize. People may not call it out immediately, but deep down they sense it. Inconsistency creates doubt, erodes trust, and communicates that your word is unreliable. Respect is not earned in moments of convenience. It is forged in patterns of integrity, in the repeated alignment of promises, actions, and principles. Every time you act inconsistently, you chip away at the foundation of influence you are trying to build. People unconsciously take note, and slowly, without malice, they begin to discount your presence, your commitments, and your voice. The human brain is wired to seek reliability. Neuroscience confirms that consistency signals stability, predictability, and competence. When your actions match your words, when your behavior aligns with your values, your brain and the brains of those around you recognize strength. Inconsistency signals the opposite. It signals uncertainty, unreliability, and weakness. Imagine the impact of every commitment you make, every word you speak, and every principle you claim to uphold. Each one is a building block. When aligned and consistent, these blocks create a structure of authority, influence, and respect that cannot be shaken by criticism, adversity, or skepticism. But when misaligned, each block becomes a crack, a fracture in the perception of your integrity, an invitation for disregard and doubt. The path to respect is deliberate. It requires conscious attention to alignment. It demands that you match your actions to your words, that your principles guide decisions consistently, and that your presence in every interaction reinforces the message you intend to send. Consistency is a magnet. It draws trust, loyalty, and recognition. People instinctively rely on those whose actions are predictable, reliable, and aligned with their stated values. When you cultivate consistency, you remove uncertainty from interactions. Others know what to expect from you. They sense reliability and gravitate toward it. Your influence grows quietly, but powerfully, because it is rooted in credibility rather than charm, in integrity rather than manipulation. Every act of alignment strengthens your foundation. Every promise kept, every principle upheld, every pattern repeated builds a gravitational field of respect that others cannot ignore. The cumulative effect is transformative. Inconsistency may feel convenient in the moment, allowing shortcuts or temporary relief, but the long-term cost is profound. It erodes trust, diminishes influence, and quietly teaches others that your word is negotiable. Consistency, on the other hand, builds a legacy of respect, authority, and impact. It shapes how the world perceives you, and even more importantly, how you perceive yourself. Each deliberate action aligned with your word and values reinforces your confidence, sharpens your presence, and elevates your energy. By committing to consistency, you create an unshakable reputation, a magnetic authority, and a life where respect is not demanded, but naturally commanded. Stand firmly in alignment. Let your actions match your words. Let your presence reflect your values. In doing so, you transform the invisible patterns that determine respect into a structure that is unbreakable, undeniable, and deeply empowering. Another habit that silently destroys respect is the inability to set boundaries. Many people fear confrontation or rejection, so they allow others to overstep, to demand more than they are willing to give, or to dictate the terms of interaction. But every time you fail to define your limits, you teach the world that your time, energy, and values are negotiable. Boundaries are not walls, they are declarations of self-respect. They communicate that you value yourself, that you honor your commitments, and that you will not allow others to dictate the terms of your life. Without boundaries, people may tolerate you, but they will not respect you. Respect is never given where clarity of limits is absent. Psychologists consistently emphasize that assertive boundaries are a cornerstone of healthy relationships, influence, and personal power. When you clearly define what is acceptable and what is not, when you communicate limits with confidence, the world responds. You create a framework within which interactions are fair, predictable, and mutually empowering. Boundaries generate authority because they demonstrate that you are in control of your life, that your priorities matter, and that you are not a passive participant waiting for others' approval. Every time you shrink from enforcing a boundary, every time you say yes when your instinct says no, you dilute your presence. You allow your energy to be drained and your influence to be minimized. But when you embrace the discipline of boundaries, a profound shift occurs. You reclaim the power that was scattered by indecision. You command attention by virtue of self-respect, and you model a standard that others cannot help but notice. This is not about being rigid or unapproachable. It is about being intentional, deliberate, and courageous. It is about creating a space where your integrity is non-negotiable, where your actions are aligned with your values, and where your presence carries weight. Every boundary you assert strengthens the perception of your authority, sharpens the clarity of your influence, and deepens the respect others hold for you. It teaches the subconscious patterns of human behavior that predict trust, admiration, and loyalty. People respect those who protect their energy, honor their priorities, and uphold their principles without apology. They instinctively recognize strength, consistency, and self-awareness. Boundaries also transform your inner experience. You no longer feel scattered, depleted, or reactive. You step into interactions from a place of control rather than chaos, choice rather than obligation. Your energy becomes magnetic because it is focused, intentional, and protected. Every decision about what you allow and what you refuse to accept builds momentum toward a life defined by agency, clarity, and impact. Setting boundaries is not optional for those who desire respect. It is essential. It transforms perception, builds influence, and shapes the reality in which you operate. Without them, your presence is diluted, your value questioned, and your authority undermined. With them, you become unshakable, deliberate, and compelling. Embrace the courage to define your limits. Speak with clarity about what you will and will not accept. Protect your time, your energy, and your principles with unwavering conviction. In doing so, you not only command respect from others, you cultivate an unbreakable sense of self-respect that radiates through every choice, every interaction, and every moment of your life. A habit that quietly erodes respect, yet is often overlooked, is the constant need for approval. When your actions, decisions, or expressions are dictated by what others think, you surrender your authority before it even exists. Seeking approval signals insecurity. It communicates that your value depends on validation from the outside rather than conviction from within. The human mind is wired to detect authenticity, and when people sense that your choices are driven by fear of judgment, respect diminishes. You may earn temporary agreement, fleeting attention, or polite compliance, but genuine regard slips through your fingers. Real influence arises from self-assuredness, from the courage to stand firm even when the world disagrees. Approval seeking is subtle. It manifests in hesitation, over-explaining, constantly adjusting to fit perceived expectations, or fearing the disapproval of those whose opinions hold little weight. Every compromise made to please someone else chips away at the structure of your self-respect. Over time, people learn to expect concession, and your presence loses the authority to inspire, challenge, or lead. The paradox is clear. The more you chase approval, the less you command respect. Neuroscience and psychology affirm that confidence is magnetic. Our brains are drawn to individuals whose behavior aligns with inner conviction, who act with clarity and purpose irrespective of external judgment. When you free yourself from the constant need to be liked, your energy transforms. People sense your groundedness, your decisiveness, and your authenticity. You no longer wait for permission to exist fully, you claim your space boldly, and others respond with acknowledgement rather than manipulation or disregard. Every time you act from a place of internal validation, every time you honor your principles over public opinion, you send a silent but powerful message. You are in command of your life, your choices, and your presence. This message resonates on a deeper level than words, creating influence that cannot be contested. Seeking approval is exhausting, depleting, and ultimately self-defeating. It keeps you trapped in cycles of doubt and reactive behavior. By contrast, grounding yourself in self-validation, by rooting every decision in personal integrity rather than external praise, generates freedom, energy, and authority. Your opinions carry weight because they are backed by certainty. Your presence commands attention because it is unshakable. Respect flows naturally toward those who are not slaves to the approval of others because it recognizes a rare combination: independence, clarity, and courage. Cultivating this habit requires vigilance and honesty. It demands recognizing moments where you seek consent over conviction and choosing differently. It requires leaning into discomfort, embracing dissent, and trusting that authenticity outweighs acceptance. Each deliberate choice to act from self-assurance strengthens your influence, sharpens your presence, and deepens the respect you command. Over time, your life becomes a reflection of your values rather than the expectations of others. You move through the world not with fear of judgment, but with the quiet, compelling authority of someone fully aligned with their purpose. Freedom from approval seeking is liberation, but it is also the gateway to genuine respect. It transforms perception, magnifies your presence, and amplifies the energy that draws people to listen, follow, and admire. Stand in the truth of your own judgment, embrace the strength of your convictions, and let respect follow naturally from the power of your authentic self. A habit that silently sabotages respect is the unwillingness to take responsibility. Every time blame is shifted, every time mistakes are hidden or denied, a subtle message is sent: you are not accountable, you are not reliable, and your integrity is negotiable. The human mind is wired to detect leadership through accountability. People instinctively respect those who own their actions, who confront errors openly, and who do not allow ego or fear to cloud judgment. Avoiding responsibility may feel protective in the moment, but it is corrosive over time. It undermines credibility, fractures trust, and diminishes influence. Every failure evaded, every excuse offered, chips away at the authority you hope to project. Responsibility is more than a moral obligation. It is a magnet for respect. It signals strength, maturity, and courage. When you take ownership of your actions, when you face consequences directly and learn from them, others cannot help but acknowledge your power. The act of accepting responsibility transforms perception immediately. People feel safe in your presence. They sense reliability and strength, and they are drawn toward the energy of someone who can navigate challenges without evasion or defensiveness. Psychology shows that accountability is one of the most consistent predictors of influence and respect in social dynamics. Leaders who demonstrate ownership cultivate loyalty, admiration, and trust because their actions are predictable, principled, and transparent. The refusal to accept responsibility, by contrast, is a signal that your energy is not yours to manage, that your word is flexible, and that your presence is negotiable. It invites doubt, fosters resentment, and quietly erodes the foundation of authority you hope to build. Taking responsibility is not weakness, it is courage. It requires confronting uncomfortable truths, acknowledging mistakes without self-pity, and committing to improvement. Every moment you embrace ownership, every instance you rise above the instinct to deflect, strengthens the architecture of respect around you. Accountability builds internal clarity as well. It aligns your actions with your values, sharpens decision-making, and deepens self-confidence. When you are responsible for your life, you are no longer at the mercy of external forces or the judgments of others. Your energy becomes deliberate, your presence commanding, and your influence undeniable. Respect thrives where responsibility is embraced. It is drawn to those who do not hide behind excuses, who do not project failure onto others, and who act with transparency and integrity. Each act of accountability communicates an invisible strength, a signal that your word, your choices, and your principles are trustworthy. To cultivate this habit, start with radical honesty. Acknowledge your mistakes without delay. Reflect on the lessons within each failure. Commit to growth and act decisively to correct missteps. The impact will be immediate and profound. Others will begin to perceive you as someone whose presence is steady, reliable, and principled. Your influence will deepen, your authority will solidify, and your life will become a reflection of unshakable integrity. Accountability is the invisible backbone of respect. It is the force that transforms fear into admiration, doubt into trust, and presence into power. Own your life fully, and the world will respond with the respect you deserve. A habit that quietly erodes respect, yet is often ignored, is inconsistency. When your words, actions, and principles shift unpredictably, people struggle to trust you. Inconsistency communicates uncertainty, instability, and unreliability. It is one of the fastest ways to lose authority, because respect thrives on predictability and integrity. Human brains are wired to detect patterns, to seek coherence in behavior. When actions don't align with words, or when decisions swing based on mood, opinion, or convenience, a dissonance forms that is impossible to ignore. Even subtle inconsistencies, changing plans frequently, contradicting your own statements, or displaying variable standards, create an invisible barrier between you and genuine respect. The emotional impact is profound. People begin to feel doubt, hesitation, and skepticism toward you. They may nod politely, engage superficially, or follow momentarily, but deep trust and admiration cannot flourish. Respect is drawn to those who are reliable, grounded, and predictable in their principles. Consistency does not mean rigidity. It means aligning your words, actions, and values into a seamless whole. It requires self-awareness, discipline, and courage. When you act consistently, others can anticipate your behavior with confidence. They know where you stand, what you value, and what they can rely on from you. This clarity is magnetic. It creates a sense of safety, stability, and credibility. Neuroscience and psychology confirm that consistent behavior triggers respect because it reduces uncertainty and fosters trust. People instinctively admire those whose presence is steady and whose decisions are rooted in principle rather than impulse. Every time you act in alignment with your values, every time you follow through on commitments and hold yourself to the standards you preach, you reinforce a perception of strength and integrity. Over time, this builds a reputation that speaks louder than words ever could. In contrast, inconsistency erodes identity. It signals weakness, indecision, and a lack of self-mastery. People may comply when convenient, but admiration and respect remain out of reach. To cultivate respect through consistency, begin with self-reflection. Clarify your core values and standards. Commit to decisions that honor those principles, even when it is uncomfortable. Monitor your actions to ensure they reflect your words. Resist the urge to bend based on pressure, trend, or fear. Every deliberate act of alignment strengthens your authority, sharpens your presence, and deepens the respect you command. Consistency is not a simple habit, it is a reflection of inner strength. It transforms how the world perceives you, turning fleeting attention into enduring influence. People are drawn to reliability because it signals mastery over self, clarity of purpose, and unwavering integrity. Your presence becomes a force, your word carries weight, and your influence expands naturally. By embracing consistency, you align your life, your values, and your actions into a coherent whole. Respect is no longer something you ask for. It becomes the inevitable response to the authority, discipline, and authenticity you embody. A habit that silently repels respect is allowing negativity to dominate your presence. The energy you carry is visible, felt, and contagious. Whether you realize it or not, complaints, Constant criticism, envy, or a focus on what is lacking communicates a deeper message. You are weighed down by doubt, fear, and dissatisfaction. People instinctively gravitate towards strength, optimism, and possibility. Negativity, even when subtle, acts as a repellent. It signals weakness, scarcity, and instability. Every complaint erodes authority. Every negative remark chips away at influence. Respect is not only earned through achievements, it is magnetized by the energy you project. Those who consistently radiate positivity, resilience, and constructive focus create an invisible force field of respect around themselves. Psychology confirms that emotions are contagious. Your mood, your attitude, and your lens shape the perception others have of you. A person consumed by negativity creates tension and discomfort, subtly undermining their own credibility and authority. Even competence is overshadowed by the weight of constant pessimism. Negativity communicates to the world that you are reactive rather than proactive, that you are governed by circumstance rather than principle. It whispers uncertainty, insecurity, and a lack of self-mastery. The remedy is not blind optimism, it is conscious mastery over your emotional landscape. Every thought, every word, every action can be a deliberate choice to create energy that uplifts, inspires, and signals strength. When you cultivate positivity without ignoring reality, you demonstrate resilience. You demonstrate clarity of purpose. You demonstrate the ability to navigate challenges without being consumed by them. People notice. They are drawn to those who can face adversity with composure, who respond to challenges with solutions rather than complaints. This is magnetic. Negativity is a habit, and like all habits, it can be replaced. Start by becoming aware of the language you use, the lens through which you view setbacks, and the stories you tell yourself and others. Replace judgment with curiosity, complaint with action, and criticism with insight. Over time, this rewires perception, both internally and externally. You begin to exude an energy that commands attention, creates trust, and naturally inspires admiration. Respect thrives in the presence of emotional mastery. It is drawn to those who maintain composure, focus, and constructive energy, even under pressure. Negativity, by contrast, alienates, drains, and diminishes influence. Your presence becomes a force not by the loudness of your voice, but by the quality of your energy, the steadiness of your mind, and the clarity of your emotional focus. To command respect, master your internal world. Let your energy communicate strength, hope, and action. Transform complaints into solutions, doubts into lessons, and fear into calculated courage. The shift is subtle but profound. As your energy aligns with resilience and constructive focus, people cannot help but respond. They begin to trust your judgment, follow your lead, and value your presence. Negativity repels. Positivity attracts. Master your energy, and the world will respect not just what you do, but who you are. A habit that quietly destroys respect is failing to set boundaries. When you allow others to overstep, when you accept disrespect, or when you constantly say yes to demands that drain you, people learn how to treat you. Without boundaries, respect becomes optional in the eyes of others. It is not about being harsh, unkind, or unyielding. It is about valuing yourself enough to define the space you occupy in the world. Boundaries communicate self-worth, clarity, and strength. They send a message that you are not at the mercy of external opinions, that your time, energy, and values matter. Every person who oversteps and finds no resistance chips away at your authority and self-respect. The emotional consequences are even more profound. You begin to feel frustration, resentment, and invisibility. Your voice becomes muted, your power diluted, and your presence unnoticed. Humans instinctively respect those who honor themselves. When you protect your energy, prioritize your values, and assert your limits, you project confidence and integrity. Setting boundaries is not about confrontation, it is about clarity. It is about saying yes to what aligns with your purpose and no to what diminishes your strength. Neuroscience shows that people respond to clear signals. A person who communicates boundaries consistently triggers respect because it reduces confusion and ambiguity. Others know what is acceptable, what is not, and what to expect. They sense strength, self-awareness, and a grounded presence. Over time, This creates a magnetic authority that commands attention without the need for dominance or aggression. Ignoring boundaries, by contrast, breeds subtle contempt. People test limits, exploit leniency, and take advantage of inconsistency. Respect cannot coexist with exploitation. To cultivate respect, begin with radical self-awareness. Understand what you value, what drains you, and where you refuse to compromise. Communicate these limits calmly, assertively, and without apology. Reinforce them through consistent action, refusing to shrink or yield unnecessarily. Boundaries are not walls, they are markers of self-respect that allow healthy connection to flourish. When you enforce them, you teach the world how to treat you. You demonstrate that your energy, time, and principles are not negotiable. This clarity breeds trust, admiration, and genuine influence. It transforms your presence into one that is respected, valued, and influential. People may push, test, or challenge your limits, but each act of consistent boundary setting strengthens your authority and reinforces your identity. Respect is drawn to those who honor themselves, who refuse to bend endlessly for the comfort of others, and who project a steady, disciplined, and self-aware presence. By mastering boundaries, you reclaim control over your life, your energy, and your influence. You signal strength without arrogance, clarity without rigidity, and power without aggression. The world instinctively responds to this alignment, and respect becomes a natural, inevitable reflection of the integrity and self-mastery you embody. A habit that silently erodes respect is inconsistency, when your words do not align with your actions, when promises are broken, or when your behavior shifts based on convenience or mood. People begin to question your reliability. Consistency is more than a routine. It is the invisible backbone of trust, authority, and influence. Human psychology craves predictability. When someone acts with steadiness and integrity, others feel safe, valued, and understood. In contrast, inconsistency breeds doubt, uncertainty, and subtle contempt. Every time you say one thing and do another, you chip away at your credibility. Every promise unfulfilled, every standard unevenly applied, signals that your values are negotiable, that your word is optional. People do not consciously tally these moments, they feel them. They sense hesitation, uncertainty, and unreliability, even when you believe your intentions are good. The most respected individuals do not simply act out of skill or intelligence. They act with disciplined consistency. Their presence is steady, their voice dependable, and their actions predictable in the best sense, aligned with principle, focused, and reliable. Consistency builds invisible authority because it demonstrates control, self-mastery, and reliability. It communicates that you are governed by your values rather than your impulses, that your commitments are not fleeting, and that your influence is rooted in integrity. Neuroscience supports this. The human brain craves patterns that signal trustworthiness. The more consistent your behavior, the more your authority grows. The less consistent, the more invisible, the more your presence is questioned and disrespected. Inconsistency can manifest in small ways. A missed deadline, an unreturned call, a promise made lightly. These fragments accumulate over time, shaping the perception others hold of you. To transform this, begin by aligning your actions with your words, no matter how small the task. Each act of integrity, each follow-through strengthens the magnetic field of respect around you. Consistency is not perfection. It is disciplined alignment with your principles and values. It is saying what you mean, meaning what you say, and doing what you promise. The energy of consistency commands attention because it signals reliability, strength, and focus. People instinctively respect those who do not waver in their principles, whose actions match their words, and whose presence is predictably powerful in its integrity. Every moment of alignment compounds over time, creating an unshakable foundation of trust and admiration. Conversely, wavering, indecisive, or unpredictable behavior communicates vulnerability, uncertainty, and lack of authority. To be respected, master the art of disciplined consistency. Let your actions mirror your values, let your word be inviolable, and let your presence signal reliability at every turn. Each act of alignment strengthens your influence, deepens trust, and ensures that respect is not given out of obligation, but earned effortlessly through the unwavering integrity you embody. Consistency is the quiet force that separates those who are followed from those who are overlooked. Master it, and respect becomes not just a possibility, but an inevitable reflection of the strength, discipline, and clarity you radiate. Silence can be louder than words. How often do you allow yourself to speak without thought, to react impulsively, or to let your emotions dictate your tone? When communication is careless, respect begins to slip away. Every sarcastic remark, every harsh comment, every thoughtless interruption signals that you are ruled by impulse rather than intention. People subconsciously measure the energy you bring into a conversation, and they respond not just to what you say, but to how you say it, and to the space you create for others. Speaking recklessly diminishes presence. Your voice loses its weight because it becomes associated with volatility or unpredictability. Conversely, a measured, deliberate voice conveys authority, confidence, and self-control. The most respected individuals understand the power of words, but even more, the power of silence. Silence is not emptiness. It is space filled with intention. It is the calm that allows others to lean in, to hear, and to feel understood. When you pause, reflect, and choose your words carefully, you communicate respect not only for yourself, but for those around you. Neuroscience shows that thoughtful communication engages the prefrontal cortex, signaling control and deliberation, while impulsive speech triggers emotional reactivity, which people instinctively perceive as weakness. Each word spoken with intention reinforces your presence and strengthens the perception of your reliability. Each word spoken recklessly chips away at the invisible foundation of respect that you have been building. Self-control in communication is not about withholding entirely. It is about strategic expression. It is about choosing to speak only when your words serve purpose, clarity, or connection. It is about resisting the urge to react defensively, to interrupt, or to dominate a conversation with noise. Every pause, every measured response, every carefully chosen word signals strength. It communicates that you are governed by reason, guided by principle, and not swayed by fleeting emotion. People naturally gravitate toward those who exhibit this mastery because it reflects stability, intelligence, and emotional resilience. You become someone whose voice carries weight, whose opinion is sought, and whose presence commands attention without demanding it. Respect thrives in spaces where communication is intentional. Impulsive reactions, emotional outbursts, and careless words erode influence because they create uncertainty about who you are beneath the surface. Discipline in communication is a silent magnet that attracts trust and admiration. Begin by noticing where your speech lacks intention. Observe moments where frustration, ego, or impulse drives your words. Replace them with reflection, breathing, and measured expression. Transforming the way you communicate transforms how people perceive your power, your control, and your integrity. Silence, when wielded consciously, is not emptiness, it is armor. It is influence, it is presence. Words become sharper, actions more aligned, and respect naturally follows. Every thoughtful pause, every deliberate word, every intentional conversation builds an invisible network of trust and authority that others cannot ignore. When you master the art of measured communication, you not only elevate how people see you, but you elevate the very energy you carry into every interaction. It is in this mastery that respect is no longer demanded, but naturally given. Look at your habits closely. Are you constantly seeking validation? Do you find yourself bending to please others, fearing their disapproval more than your own truth?